T-minus 10, 9.
You're listening to the Launchpad Podcast with J-Man.
5,
Brought to you by Gallant Media.
2, 1.
Here's your host,
Ignition.
J-Man.
And so, yeah, I had a clothing line and I was trying to sell some clothing to the local professional baseball team. And the PR guy said, why don't you come play a couple games next weekend with us? And I was like, really? And he said, yeah, we'd love to have you. So I suited up for a couple of games and got a hit in my first at bat. So, it was awesome.
Oh, wow. So Wikipedia actually turned out to be a good resource right there.
Yep. So I finished my professional baseball career with a .333 batting average, which puts me in the Baseball Hall of Fame, right?
That's right. That's pretty impressive. I am sitting across from one of the greatest hockey players of all time. If there's a gold medal to be won, he's won it, including a Stanley Cup. You're also the author of Playing with Fire. I want to talk about that book. Fantastic. And you're an advocate for sexual abuse victims. And now you're the chief relationship officer for Metamedical Solutions VR. Welcome to the program, Theo Fleury.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Awesome.
So we touched on baseball. And how did you come around to NSA anyways and raising awareness for that organization? Was that one of many, or is there a relationship that you have there?
Yeah. So I have a really good friend. His name is Andy Batty. And he's actually an interventionist. And I put on a men's sexual abuse golf tournament in Belleville, Ontario, of all places. Mm-hmm. And Andy actually came to the very first tournament that we did. So I sort of got to know him then. And after that golf tournament, we kept in touch. And he does a lot of charity events out west in Vancouver and British Columbia. And he called me up and he said, yeah, we have this huge softball tournament in Kamloops, BC. I'm going to put on an event there, home run derby. Would you be willing to come? And I'm like, sure, I would absolutely love to come. And so that's how that sort of, all came about. And we raised a whole bunch of money for a couple of his causes and whatnot. So, yeah, he's an awesome guy, and I've seen him do a tremendous amount of healing since when I met him the first time. Like he was pretty crazy, and over the years I've seen him sort of blossom into this really cool guy who's always helping people. So that's cool to see.
Yeah. So there's somebody else that I know that knows you. And this goes back a couple of years, and it was the Saddle Dome. I am familiar with a gentleman named Ben Roots, who's from the Ottawa Valley. Yes. And I used to work as a country music radio announcer.
Oh, okay.
In the Valley. I actually went to school in Belle Vegas as well. I went to Loyola College. So a lot of ties here. A lot of ties.
Yeah.
And he was playing with Johnny Reed, Juno winner.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently at the Saddle Dome, you got up on stage and you sang a tune. Do you remember what song that was? Yeah,
absolutely. So I had met Johnny through, what was it? Can't remember how many years ago. We came out with a country music album that I spent 6 years putting this album together, because I knew it had to be done perfect and right, because Carl Lewis ruined it for all of us guys that were athletes that were trying to become singers, right?
Right.
And so I knew that I had to, this album had to be really good. Mm-hmm. And so one of the guys I had been friends with for a long time was a guy named Ron Sakamoto. Ron Sakamoto. I've heard the name. He's one of the biggest country music promoters in all of the world. And I'd met Ron at a golf tournament, I think the summer after we won the Stanley Cup. I was at the Sutter Brothers golf tournament in Lethbridge, Ontario, Alberta. And I played golf with Ron. And he told me he was a country music promoter, and I was like, oh my God, I'm the biggest country music guy on the planet. And, I was country before, when country wasn't cool. And so every big concert that came to Calgary, Ron would always call me and say, hey, you want tickets? And so, I got to see Garth Brooks and Brooks and Dunn and all these, great bands, got to meet them, got to hang out with them. And so when I started down the music trail, I called Ron with a bunch of my demos. I sent a bunch of my demos to Ron, and he was like blown away. He's like, this stuff is really, really good. And I was like, good. And so I ended up meeting Johnny Reed through Ron, and Johnny was like, hey, we're playing at the Stampede in Calgary. He says, why don't you get up in the middle of my show and do one of your songs? And I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. He said, it'd be great to have you come up. And so the very first song I ever wrote was basically a song about my life in music called As the Story Goes. And so there was 15,000 people at the Saddle Dome that night. It was the 100th anniversary of the Calgary Stampede. And I got up with my band, and we belted out this tune, and it was awesome. It was so much fun. And Johnny's such an amazing guy, and what an entertainer he is.
Yeah.
Like he puts on. I would say the best entertainer is Garth Brooks, and then Johnny Reed probably be a second guy that I would say that is a real true, entertainer.
Right. And some of your influences, I was reading, rest in peace, Charlie Pride.
I know.
We just lost him.
Sad day, man.
Yeah.
I was, I grew up, my dad's an entertainer, right? And he sang all Charlie Pride songs, Buck Owens, all those guys like that. And so those are the guys I grew up listening to. And so, our sort of, genre is kind of rockabilly country is what, is our genre. So, which is kind of like Buck Owens and Dwight Yoakam has, all the guys in my band, they love Dwight Yoakam too. So there's kind of that influence in our music. So it's great.
Well, I'm going to jump around a whole bunch because you've
Sure.
done so much. It's hard to keep it linear. It would be a mess. It would be a mess.
Yes, exactly.
So let's go to 2015, and you release a country music album, I Am Who I Am. And Ben, when I was talking to him about you on stage, he's like, this guy's got chops. Like, this is a legitimate country music album, right? Because there's so many people that are famous in one area. They try to do something else, and quite frankly, it's not good. I listened to quite a few tracks on your album, and you bring it. And
well, thank you.
No problem. That was obviously therapeutic to some degree, on top of like this unsurmountable, I think, happiness and joy. Like, it's kind of a clashing of the two, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I've always been in the entertainment business, right? Being an athlete, you're an entertainer. And, same with speaking, you're on stage, entertaining people, inspiring people, all this stuff. And so, and because sexual abuse is such a topic that's rarely spoken about, and I'm very familiar, very comfortable in that space. And, after I wrote my book, I was like, geez, if I can write a book, I'm sure I can write songs, right? And I had a friend in the music business who works for Sony, and he lives in Winnipeg, and our dads used to play music together before we were even born. And my buddy in Manitoba, when he was 14 years old, he was a really great hockey player. And 14 years old, his parents bought him a guitar, and he quit playing hockey. And all he did was spend the next 4 or 5 years in his room playing this guitar. And so I called him up and I said, hey, I want to stroke something off my bucket list. I said, would you write a song with me? And he's like, yeah, I'd love to. And so I went to Winnipeg and we wrote this song called As the Story Goes. And, you know, when he sent it back to me, when it was finished, you know, I listened to it and I was like, man, this is really good. And so I phoned him and I said, what do you think of this song? He goes, yeah, it's a great song. And so I kept going back to Winnipeg and spending more time with him and writing more songs. And so we ended up writing 30 songs and we picked the 10 best and found a recording studio here in Calgary and, you know, recorded the I Am Who I Am album. And yeah, it was amazing. It was very cathartic. And, you know, basically the album is Playing with Fire, my book, in music.
The musical.
Yes, exactly.
There you go. Now, you transcend in everything that you do. Like there's always a next level up. But there's the there's the regular person, then there's Theo.
Right.
And the same thing kind of happened with your music. Not only did you make an album in 2015, but you're also immortalized in a video game.
Yes.
I'm a big gamer. And
okay.
So, oddly enough, though, I mean, you know, it was not in your sport. It's in football, in a Metamedical.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
So the first year I went to Mario Lemieux's fantasy camp in Pittsburgh, I was sitting beside this kid in the dressing room. And he's from St. Louis. And I have one NHL record, okay? I scored 3 shorthanded goals in one game in St. Louis in 1991. And this kid, Michael Young, who was sitting beside me, says to me, he goes, I just want to share this with you. He goes, I was 9 years old, sitting in the stands at the old St. Louis Arena the night that you scored your shorthanded hat trick. I was like, holy shit. Wow. That's amazing. So then I said to him, I said, so what do you do for a living? He goes, I build the Madden football game. I was like, wow, that's really cool. But before that, he worked on the NHL game for EA Sports before he moved on to Madden, right? And so we became really great friends at this camp and we exchanged numbers. And then like 2 years later, I get this random text from him saying, hey, I've been listening to your music. He goes, I fucking love your music. He goes, you know, would you write a song for the Madden football game? And I'm like, yeah, I would. Okay. So he sends me the parameters and the script for this thing that they're doing with the Madden football game. And so we write this song called Long Shot. And it's an awesome song, like really cool song, good vibe, you know, talking about going to the combine and all this stuff. And so, yeah, it's on the 2018 Madden football game. So
that's pretty wild. What's also wild, and I'm sorry, I'm going to fanboy out just a little bit. Like, I used to play your character in video games.
Of course.
You were like the fastest dude. I think it was like you and McGillney were like, did you ever track the progress of your player in video games? Were you ever into it that way, or did you ever play your own character?
I was awful at the hockey, right?
Really?
Yeah. And what I loved the PGA Tour game on Sega Genesis, right?
The best, yes.
Yeah, was unreal. And you know what's funny is I just saw the documentary for the 94 EA Sports hockey game. Have you seen that documentary yet?
No, I didn't even know that was out.
Oh my God. Like there's a guy that lives way up in the Yukon who like did a whole documentary on this cult of 94 people. And it's awesome. It's so great. The documentary is awesome. And I was actually up in the Yukon speaking. I was doing a speaking tour through the Yukon, and he caught wind that I was going to be there. And so I'm actually I'm in the documentary talking about this video game. So it's kind of cool.
Oh, nice. I'm gonna have to check that out. I mean, I played those games like nobody's business. And too bad that was in an era where there's no money. Now kids are making $1 million playing these games. Bananas.
It's crazy, huh?
Man, I missed my time.
You did.
Now, I'd like to move into the book.
Yep.
And you've already made a couple of references to it. Incredibly powerful book. Anyone that I know that has read it, and I've recommended it to many, all love it. And it resonated with me in the fact that I had gone through a very deep depression, and I never realized that I had a problem with alcohol until I went through that depression.
Right.
And I was also the type of individual, which really compounded it, is that I would have told someone like me that was going through something like that to go read a book, go do some personal development, figure it out, go for a walk, right?
Yeah.
And there's this line in your book, and it's right off the top. And I literally kind of stopped reading right there. And you said, I sat there forever, shivering so hard, the barrel was bouncing off my teeth. Like, do you remember that sound?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like that feeling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
that was 16 years ago, and I think anybody who has a trauma history like mine eventually gets to that place or that point in their life where, you have to make a decision. Am I going to live or am I going to die? And for me, that was that moment. And I didn't want to end my life, but I was completely exhausted from living in emotional pain and suffering for the majority of my life. And, I tried everything on the planet to get rid of this. And, when I couldn't pull the trigger, that was a sign that, I better figure this out, right? I better figure out how to live with all of this trauma, right? And, that was the beginning of this journey that I've been on for the last 16 years is, figuring how to live life on life's terms, right? And come to some sort of understanding and peace with what happened to me, right? And thank God I've been able to figure it out. But the book was the turning point in my life, right? Is when I sort of transitioned from being Theo Fleury, the hockey player, to Theo Fleury, the advocate and the activist, right? Because it was unbelievable how many people during that book tour came up to me at the book signing table and said, "Me too," right?
Wow.
Or, "Hey, I read your story. You told my story. Me too," right? And yeah, so I've been in this space now since then, working in trauma, mental health, and addiction. And so I really believe it's the true purpose for my life. I always thought I was just going to be a hockey player and then, sort of fade off into the sunset. But, the universe had a bigger plan for me. Right. And, gave me this voice and I definitely use it at every opportunity I get to talk about, what I think is the biggest epidemic on the planet. It's not COVID-19. It's trauma, mental health, and addiction is the biggest,
Right.
epidemic on the planet.
Right. It's a difficult place to be, and I can only imagine what you've been through. And I know for myself is that there's this suffering in silence and an embarrassment. And for me, it was that I've been a business owner. I have led teams, and I thought that wasn't something that I could share with people because I wouldn't be able to get them to follow me anymore. Like if I have a drinking problem, they're not going to follow me anymore. If I'm depressed, they're not going to follow me anymore. What was the number one thing that you had to identify within yourself to start that healing?
Well, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, right?
Yeah.
You
So
know?
that was really the rock bottom. Like that is
Yeah.
the rock bottom. And do you believe that everyone that has gone down that hole as far as you did, there's a point of no return where you just have to hit that bottom to get any better?
Well, I think everybody has their own bottom, some
Right.
more extreme than others.
Fair.
To me, it was, it was the gun, right? The
Right.
gun for me was, like I, I might not be here, right? You know what I mean? And so, and surrender, right? Right. Surrender is a big part of it. And, asking for help, right? I always say the day that I asked for help was the day that I saved my own life, was the day I asked for help. And, the stigma attached to that statement, is, as an advocate, that's what I fight every single day is stigma, right? And what I tell people is if you suffer from some sort of mental illness, guess what? You're in the majority. You're not in the minority, and, we have all these mental health campaigns, which the first line is always 1 in 5 Canadians. And I'm like, why are we shaming the one person who has mental illness? Why are we singling them out when actually it's 5 in 5? It's all of us.
Yeah.
Right. And so, changing the language, right? Getting rid of labels, anxiety, depression, right? Those labels keep the disease or the affliction in place, because there's no safe space to talk about depression. There's no safe space to talk about anxiety and panic disorder. There's no place to talk about OCD. There's no place to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. There's no place for that. And so being vulnerable is the key to all of this. And when you get to that place of vulnerability, that's where all the healing is, right? Is that, I don't have to carry this facade, right? Because we're all so good at wearing lipstick, right? I call it lipstick, right? When we leave the house, we're put together, right? But, the insides have to match the outsides. And you can only carry that facade for so long before you're going to have, some sort of breakdown, right? And so, the vulnerability piece to me, is the key to all of this, because vulnerability creates safety. And then when you have safety, that's when the magic of healing happens, is when you feel safe, where you can talk about, all the crazy shit that you did, and nobody's going to judge you, and people understand, hey, I've been there, right? And in the book, I don't think I could have been more vulnerable in the book. Right. I just laid it all out there because I didn't care what people thought of me. I just wanted to get better, and I didn't want to die. I wanted to live. Right. And, making that choice and making that decision, changed my life.
Right. And that book turned into a movie/doc, which I also watched. And I was fascinated by Chelsea Piers. You are you're a kind human. There's a kindness in you, like a really strong nucleus of kindness. And I saw that throughout the documentary with the gentleman that would park your car and you tip them generously.
That was unbelievable. Yeah. Jacques. His name is Jacques. I'll never forget that guy.
Yeah. And what is it about him that made him so memorable to you?
Just, I respected how hard he worked,
right,
and how much pride he took in his job, and I never saw him in a bad mood, ever.
Right.
Never saw him in a bad mood. He was happy to be alive, and, the amount of respect and the amount of kindness in which he provided me in the 3 years that I was a New York Ranger was, he was one of my favorite guys.
Mm-hmm. That's
because
awesome.
when when you're heading to the rink to play, right? Who's the first person you see before you enter the building? It's Jacques, and he's fucking pumped to be alive.
Yeah.
Right? And he works in a parking garage. So what does that tell you? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, what does that tell you? And the reaction was priceless. Like that was an Academy Award moment in the documentary for sure.
Right. Now we'll take it down a notch and talk about the peers. And you said you would always bring wine and you'd give them a couple of bucks, right? You're hanging out with obviously homeless people. Are these other people that also have addictions, or are you the worst one around that barrel of fire? Are you looking at all these other guys like they kind of have their shit together a little bit more than me, or?
Well, I don't think the real world at that time could relate to what had happened to me.
Right.
And the guys that I would sit, drink with around the burning barrel, they all had trauma.
Right.
Right. They were abused, abandoned, neglected, fucking, you name it. Right. And so I could relate. I had trouble like when I was on the ice, I had no trouble relating, right? Because that was my space. That was, I knew everything. My brain was, fully there.
Mm-hmm.
But when I left the rink, I didn't know who I was, right? Because I had this secret, right, that I was carrying around. And when I went to talk to these guys around the burning barrel, there was no judgment ever. There was only understanding. There was a lot of caring, and I enjoyed listening to their stories and their struggles. And I would say that the majority of those guys were way happier than I was.
Right.
And I thought, how could this be? Right? I have everything. Fame, fortune, money, all that stuff. And really at the end of the day, that's not what it's about. To me, it's about relationship. Right. And the one relationship that I'd neglected the most was the one that I had with myself.
Right.
And it wasn't until I started having a relationship with myself that things started to get better. Because after my abuser left my life, I took over the abuse and I abused myself for many, many years.
Right.
And it wasn't until I stopped abusing myself that things started to get better. Right. Because I had to find value in myself. Like I had to like myself. I had to take care of myself, those kind of things. And so, the process of healing is a 3-step process. It's emotional, physical, and spiritual healing. That's what has to happen. And, I've been on that journey now for, like I said, almost 15 years. And I do like myself, and I do, take care of myself better than I ever did at any point in my life. And when shit's bothering me, I fucking talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Theo, this is a PG show. I'm kidding.
I'm sorry.
I'm fucking with you.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, I always say I grew up in a locker room.
Right. You can't help yourself.
Where fuck was used as a verb, an adjective, a proposition, all of it. Right.
Right.
I'll tell you a great story. So when I was in New York, Ronnie Lowe was my coach, and we had a 45-minute video meeting, and he said fuck 450 times in 45 minutes. I counted all of them.
Really?
Yeah. So
it's a good meeting.
Yes.
Got a lot accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Okay, so
but he got his point across.
He did, right. There's something to be said about that word.
Yeah.
So I also want to pull something out of that story that you told in regards to Chelsea Piers, is that don't just look at a homeless person as being a homeless person. That's a person with a story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We all have a story, but unfortunately we haven't created a space for those stories. Right. Because people
Well, please.
People
continue.
don't want to. People don't want to hear that stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I actually think that those are the stories that are actually normal. That they're actually portraying what is actually happening in the world,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So
Interesting. And there's something else that stuck with me as well because you got emotional, and it was in regards to you couldn't go into two of the three buildings, that you played at. Has the United Center and Madison Square Garden made amends with you? I know that you reached out and you said whatever. Have they gotten over it yet? Like you haven't done enough good at this point to where maybe
I don't know.
PR person-
I haven't been back. Well, I've been to New York once, but once or twice. I think I've been twice.
Okay.
And the Rangers weren't playing, so there was no reason for me to go back there. I haven't been back to Chicago since I did the documentary. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to touch on two dates. September 18th, 2005. And it was actually a really great cinematic shot during the documentary. That really hit. And you said that you stood there for a while. So I don't know how long a while is. So number one, how long was a while that you were sitting there looking at yourself? And people laugh sometimes at mirror therapy. Like the fact that there's some people out there that cannot make contact with their own eyes in a mirror. They're just not able to do it. What was the strongest thought that was running through your mind through those moments of time that you spent in front of your reflection?
You know what? I actually think it was the first time in my life that I was actually okay being with myself.
Wow.
Right. And I think it was 45 minutes that I stood there. And, the night before I went to sleep, I asked the creator to take away this obsession. Right. And at the end of the 45 minutes, I went, holy shit, my prayer's been answered. And that was the last day I had a drink or a drug. And that was 5,602 days ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so that's when I started down this road of, self-discovery and being okay. And, because my biggest fear, I could never be alone. Right. Could never be with myself. And now, fuck, I love it. Right. It's amazing that you can get rid of all that fear and all of that shame and guilt and, all those things that sort of hold us in suspended animation, right, for so long that, there is a way to get through this and have peace, have joy, have serenity, these kind of things. And ultimately that's what the goal is. Peace, joy, happiness, and serenity is where we're trying to get to, right? That no matter what space we're in, we have that sense of peace and joy and serenity, right?
Yeah, and congratulations on another day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Celebrations.
Yeah. I don't talk, I very rarely talk about how many years I've been sober. I just talk about days,
Right.
Because, as they say in the program, it's a daily reprieve. So that's all it is. Because tomorrow I could drink, right?
Right.
But today I'm not. So that tells me it's 24 hours, and, in the mental health space, if I think about the past, that's depression. If I think about the future, that's anxiety. So what's the goal? The goal is try to be present as much as we can.
Right.
24 hours at a time.
Right.
And, we're trying to sleep 8 of those hours. Right. So basically for 16 hours, I got to try and live, in the moment and in the present, which is, very Buddhist way of thinking of things. But, those guys are relatively happy, those guys.
Right. They kind of got their shit together.
They got their shit together,
I made this post just yesterday, a favorite quote of mine by Zig Ziglar. People often say motivation doesn't last, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
it's a daily routine, right?
Right.
You know, especially with addiction issues. You know, it's a daily thing, right?
Mhm.
And you know, the object is to get the mind to quiet down,
Mhm.
right? You know, stop racing. Because I remember, fuck, like there was so many times when I couldn't shut my brain down. And I said to my first AA sponsor, I go, is there ever going to come a time in my life where I can think about one thought at a time?
Right.
And he goes, if you do the work, he goes, it'll happen. And he was right. You know, it did happen. I can think about one thing at a time instead of 4,000 things.
Right. Hashtag goals.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's great. Here's another date, September 28th, 2009. You know, how important was it for you to retire as a Calgary Flame?
Well, I think what's more important is that I didn't retire as a suspended player. I think
Right.
that, you know, that was, you know, and that was the goal at the beginning of the process was, you know, I just wanted to be reinstated.
Right.
Right. There was, you know, the training camp stuff was like way out there. I didn't even know if that was a possibility. But what I did was, you know, I got into a routine, a daily routine for 9 months. Okay. Because I had to go through a certain process to show the NHL and the NHL doctors that I was, you know, on this path. And so, yeah, like I was working out 6 hours a day. I changed my diet, you know, the whole 9 yards. And I think it was 3 weeks before training camp, I got a call from Daryl Sutter, because, you know, I was out, I had 3 trainers. And so, you know, word travels fast in the small city. Like, why the fuck is Theo Fleury, you know, training like a madman, you know? And he called me and he said, hey, he said, what's happening with reinstatement? I'm like, you know what? Still up in the air. I don't know what's happening. And he said, well, as soon as you get the word, as soon as you're reinstated, he says, we'd love to have you at Flames camp. So the night before camp, I had to fly to Phoenix.
Oh, wow.
Because Gary Bettman was in Phoenix, because Phoenix was, you know, a shit show. That franchise was in a you know, a whole mess. And so Gary called me, said, can you fly to Phoenix? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I flew to Phoenix and met with Gary, and he, you know, basically said, you know, love all the work you've done. You know, you're doing amazing. He goes, we're going to reinstate you. So I leave that meeting. I call Daryl and say, I'm in Phoenix right now. I just got reinstated. You know, I want to come to camp. And so the next morning I'm fucking at Calgary Flames training camp. And, you know, it was amazing 3 weeks, you know, to be doing something that I always loved to do. And, you know, it was kind of the redemption piece in my story, you know, because I didn't have a whole lot of credibility, and people didn't believe me and all that stuff. And so to be able to go to that training camp and have this success, you know, that I did. But what blew me away was I think I did 14 fitness tests in Calgary.
Yeah.
And at 41 years old, I recorded the highest testing score of the 14.
Really?
You know, at 41 years old.
Yeah.
And out of the 52 guys that were at camp, kids that were half my age, I finished 11th out of the 52 guys in the fitness test. And so, you know, I think just that alone was, because what was funny was, as I started doing the fitness testing, like nobody was around, like no management, no nothing. I was just, testing. And soon as my test results were being, sort of spread around the dressing room, all of a sudden fucking everybody's like watching me, test. And I'm like, what the fuck is this all about? Right. And I remember Daryl coming up to me and he said, you know what? He goes, I had no idea that you were taking this as seriously as you were. And so, yeah, it was unbelievable.
That's a wild story.
Yeah.
That's a wild story.
Yeah. Well, I think I started, like, I was 225 pounds when I started. And when I got to camp, I think I was 180 pounds. And I went from 22% body fat to 8% in 9 months.
Right.
And I lost, fucking 25, 40 pounds.
Yeah. I believe you manifested that, obviously. I mean,
oh, yeah.
You put that whole thing into play.
Yeah,
and then crushed it.
Yeah. And then, 4 years to the day that I got sober, I'm in a fucking shootout in the Saddle Dome.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And you score.
And I score. You know what I mean? Like, that's, like if people write that into a script, it's like, that's bullshit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
And, it happened. And, yeah. And I remember when I stepped over the boards, the place went nuts.
Right.
For the shootout, and I actually started laughing because I'm like, how the fuck does this happen?
Right.
And then I say to myself, well, I got to fucking score now. Right. I've always subscribed to the Malcolm Gladwell theory of 10,000 hours. Right.
Right.
And as I was skating in on that breakaway, I was probably as calm as I'd ever been at any point in my life on a breakaway.
Right. Because
that instinct and all that practice, took over. And my forte was breakaways, right? I rarely missed breakaways. And so, all of that training and all those years of, being on the ice, it just took over. And when the puck went across the goal line, man, that place was nuts. My kids were coming up to me after the game because, two of them never seen me play in the NHL. And they said, do you realize that there was grown men crying in the stands when you scored that goal? And I was like, no, I didn't realize it because I was in the moment. But, when I got home and I put on YouTube and people who had recorded it were in the stands, it was unbelievable.
Right. And what a moment. Because it really was surreal. I can only imagine what it was like for you, but it just doesn't get much more picturesque than that. You're a lone man at center ice, you goalie, and it was a sweet move.
It was unbelievable.
Good peak. Now, I know you're a critic of today's hockey, and I am with you. You played in the greatest era of hockey ever. Like, it was just, you made hockey cards exciting. That's how good that era of hockey was, right?
Yes.
And there were so many amazing players from that time.
Unbelievable.
Every night you were playing against a superstar for the most part. And just the amount of points that were being racked up and the freedom that players had to play, but it was also rough. It was a rough game. Who is your favorite player to watch today that you think could have played very well in your era of yesteryear?
Yeah, I look at Sydney and I look at Ovechkin, right?
Right.
Those two guys would have fit in quite well, in our era of playing. I really believe the game is way too overcoached.
Yeah.
We have 4 or 5 coaches on the bench, and they all have iPads.
Right. One for each player.
You know, so it's almost like they're playing Xbox with these guys, you know.
Right.
And the way the coach's mentality now is, you know, a 0-0 tie and you get a scoring chance in the last minute. That's how the game is coached, right? Whereas in our era, you know, we had freedom to be a lot more creative. You know, there's very little one-on-one play now. And like I remember I was watching an old game, Montreal Canadiens, when they were on that Stanley Cup run of 5 Stanley Cups and Scotty Bowman was the coach. Well, he was the only coach.
Right.
He was running the whole entire bench. Right. So I think, wouldn't it be cool if you could only have one coach on the bench? How much different the game would be if there was only one. If you're only allowed one coach on the bench.
I think they should try it. They've done everything else to the game. They might as well. Why not try one coach?
Yeah. But you'd eliminate a lot of, you know, salary.
Right. A lot of moolah. That's not gonna pan out too well, I think, with the.
But like, if you look at football, they have a coach for everything. Like everything.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. You know? So, and I believe that coaching is a minor thing in the big picture, right? Okay. It's only one spoke in the ring of the wheel. And it's the players. It's the players that have to play, right? And, you know, I used to hate video sessions. Like,
did you pay attention? Did you really pay attention, or you didn't pay attention at all? And you went out there anyways and still scored a point a game.
Yeah, because I knew that I could.
Right.
Like, I knew if I made a mistake, that I had the ability and the talent to overcome that, right? Whereas there wasn't a lot of guys that could make up for their mistakes.
True.
Right? You know, I always love that line when Scotty Bowman was coaching Paul Coffey, and I think he benched him for a couple of shifts, and Scotty said to Paul, he says, "Okay, get your ass out there." And Paul Coffey says, "Do you want me to tie it or win it?"
That's great.
You know?
Right. Now, you had mentioned Ovechkin being one of those players. Do you think he has an opportunity to catch Gretzky with goals? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, anything's possible.
Right.
But if, you know, if they're only playing 50 games a year, it's going to be really hard for him to, you know, to do that, right? And he's not a spring chicken anymore, right? So, and now, I believe that it's going to be very rare to see guys play past 35, right? In our era, there was lots of guys that were 40 that were playing. Now, you know, that's, you know, significantly changed. You know, I think I saw a stat last night on the TV. I think there's only 4 guys over 35 that are still playing in the NHL right now.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. And you're right. There used to be so many players that could at least get closer. Well, I mean, we have Yarmer that's playing now.
Yeah.
You know, Chris Chelios would be the most notable to me as far as my era is concerned, playing as an older gentleman.
Yeah.
And look, you did it. Technically, you did it too. Right.
Well, I retired. Well, I left the game when I was 36, right? And I probably could have played till I was, I don't know, 40 if I would have my shit together.
Right.
You know? But
no, I don't know. I'm conflicted on this point because I want to go into your Hall of Fame numbers. Right? Is that it's all there. I mean, you have all the awards, like the Olympic medal, a Stanley Cup, a point a game over a long career, and like most of that career was a haze. And now on top of that, I understand that they take into consideration a player's behavior during their time as a player. But I mean, we're coming up on 13 years. You have done at least as much good as you have done damage, and a lot of that damage was to you. I mean, of course,
Right.
there's your circle
Yes.
and people that are close to you, and I'm sure you hear about it all the time. And I don't want to beat you over the head with it,
Mhm.
but for the love of God, like, what the fuck is going on? That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I'm so tired of these powers that be, like these people in positions of authority that constantly take their thumb and they press it down on people.
Yeah.
And your numbers are there. I mean, you are on a mission now to make people's lives better, which is a lot more than a lot of players that are already in the hall have done. I'm
Right.
almost finished, Theo. I'm pumped about this.
I know that a lot of people are angry,
Yeah.
right? And, you know, I always say, you know, if I have to justify why I should be there, then I probably shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? So,
Fair.
but here's my one argument, and it's a mic drop. So
Okay.
there was 4 best on best tournaments in the 90s. 91 Canada Cup, 96 World Cup of Hockey, 98 Olympics, 2002 Olympics. And I played on all 4 of those teams. So for a decade, I was considered one of the 23 best hockey players in all of Canada.
Mhm.
Mic drop.
Yeah, that is a mic drop. Representing the country, our country, and now let him into our Hall of Fame, for crying out loud. I'll say it for you.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
and-
Here's another stat.
Oh.
So there's 15 guys in the history of the game that have a point per game in the regular season and a point per game in the playoffs, and 14 of them are in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
I think that's another mic drop. I heard a mic drop in the distance, Theo.
So, you know, but
That's a good one. Do you know of a gentleman named Liam McGuire? He's someone that's been on the podcast.
yes,
Yeah.
great guy. Great
I-
guy.
I'm
Hockey
gonna-
encyclopedia.
Right. I'm going to drop that one on him and see if he's aware of that one. He probably is.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's someone I came across probably, oh my God, Lord knows how long ago. And I think he was toting around a VHS tape,
Right.
throwing that into players and doing presentations and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So you've given me more than 45 minutes. I won't keep you any longer. I do want to talk about what you're doing now, which I think
Yeah.
is so fantastic. I've been using the app myself. So
Oh,
yeah, it's a virtual reality app, and the music for meditation, mindset, all that type
Yeah.
of stuff.
yeah.
A whole
Well,
bunch
it's
of different categories.
it's the next level of meditation.
Right. Okay. So you're the
Yeah.
Chief Relationship Officer at Metamedical Solutions VR. Please speak on that. How did that come to be? What is
Mhm.
the app here for, and what transcends this app from anything else that's
Yeah.
out there?
So I have an Army veteran who I ride motorbikes with in the summer, and he has severe PTSD from a couple of tours in Afghanistan. And he had the Metamedical guys on his podcast. And so they gave Mark, which is my Army buddy's name, they gave him a free subscription to the app. And so for 27 years, Mark has severe nightmares at night from his PTSD from his tours in Afghanistan. And within the first 2 days of him using the app, he didn't have any nightmares. And so this company is a startup. And so Mark suggested to Dr. Pat, who's the CEO of Metamedical, said, you should call Theo. And so I get this random message on LinkedIn from Dr. Pat saying, hey, we got this really cool technology. Would you like to take a look at it? Right. So I get on the phone with Dr. Pat. He offers me a job like instantly. We got to have you, got to work for us,
Right.
you know, all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I think I should probably use the app first before anything else.
Fair.
So the first night I used the app, I'm like blown away. Right. So then, day 2 goes by, day 3 goes by, and I'm like, what is up with this app? Right. So my second book I wrote with a a lady named Kim Barthel, who is an occupational therapist, but also has a degree in neurobiology. And so I called her and I said, what do you think about this, binaural beat stuff? She's like, it's a game changer. She said, you should be using it. And I go, well, what tracks should I be using? She's like, use this one, this one, this one, this one. So I started like every day, made a point of, listening to these beats. And I'm telling you, I was more hopeful. I had more motivation. My depression was, better. And so reading about the science of binaural beats, I've done thousands of hours of therapy, all kinds, I've done every type of therapy known to mankind. And what I sort of figured out was there isn't a type of therapy out there that can recalibrate my nervous system. And there isn't anything out there that can recalibrate my brain, right? And because when we're traumatized as kids, we're constantly in that fight or flight response. And there's very little kinds of therapy that can actually get me into a state where I'm calming down this system where all of my trauma is stored, right? Because I've had nightmares too. Like I have nightmares for a long time. They're gone.
Wow.
Right.
Right.
And so, like we're not a meditation app. Like you can be anywhere at any time and, pick out a track, put on a set of headphones. You can be walking, you can be running, you can be working out, you can be vacuuming the floor, you can be watching TV, doesn't matter. The app does all the work for you,
right? Which
is amazing. And,
right.
And you're using it. That's amazing.
I have it right
What's
there.
What's your favorite one?
I like what do they call it? It's right there. Motivation Boost. It's at the top. That's the one I listen to all the time. Yeah. So
awesome.
And if you can see for the listener right there is that the screen moves. Like you can actually look around and
that's
that
right.
is so badass. Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Yeah, well, and we're super excited when our VR comes out, which is going to happen really soon. So I can basically put you in any setting you want to be in.
Wow.
On a beach, on the side of a mountain, on a wooded trail, where I can put you anywhere you want, which will then enhance. And then once, the AI, the artificial intelligence kicks in, then we'll be able to start sending you tracks automatically. So you don't even have to search for them.
Yeah.
Right. So
eventually it's going to spray water on my face.
Yeah,
I'm going to be
absolutely.
Next level.
For sure. So yeah, it's been fun to be a part of that. And then I also started working for a company called Ibogaine, Universal Ibogaine. And so basically it's a tree root that grows in Africa that completely eliminates the detox off of opioids and heroin and alcohol and all these things. Because when people are coming off of opioids or heroin, it's like an exorcism. If anybody's seen the movie Ray Charles and watching him go through his heroin detox, this plant basically eliminates all that in about 7 days.
I'll have to get the link for that so I can share it in the description. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's Universal Ibogaine.
Okay.
And right now we're going through the process of, getting it FDA approved in Canada and the United States. Okay. We have a treatment facility in Cancun, Mexico, where we've done, I think, 3,700 people have gone through that particular treatment facility. Our CEO is in Belize right now, trying to open up another treatment facility there. So, and my job is basically coming up with the aftercare program for all of these people who go through the ibogaine treatment facility. So,
Oh, well, Theo Fleury, future Hall of Famer. Thank you very much for dropping in on the Launchpad podcast. I can't tell you how much the viewership is going to enjoy this, and I wish you continued success in all your endeavors. And you take care, be well, and love simply because you can.
Yes, thank you, sir. It was a pleasure to be on, and I'm happy that you're using the app and getting the benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that drew me to you. I had a whole different season kind of planned, and I really wanted to focus on wellness with COVID, right?
Yeah,
and
of course.
So you already covered the alcohol and drug abuse and depression and anxiety, and then I saw this app and I'm like, well, wow, like this is something that should get out there, right?
Yes.
And obviously you're in that position for a reason. It's because you have a voice. So to be able to help get that out there. So it's an absolute honor to have you on.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about it, because everybody that I've sent the app to has come back and the feedback has been nothing but positive. So it's a great tool, and I'm glad you're using it and seeing the benefits.